Hello everybody, MattLakeTA here. In today's video I'm going to show you a walkthrough of this new plugin that I've just released on the Fab Marketplace for Unreal Engine 5. So this is a set of material expressions that you can use to extract multiple masks from an RGB channel. So you can eventually get 6, 8 or 10 masks from 3 or 4 channels, which is really useful because as anybody who does shaders know, you can quite easily run out of masks and then the amount of texture samples can dramatically go up. So this is a really cool technique. And if anybody saw my Unreal Fest talk a few years ago, you might have seen me talk about this technique. So yeah, we've got a lot of assets. So we've got 8 assets that's included in the plugin. There is 3 material expressions and 4 material functions, as well as 2 textures and things like that to actually demonstrate. So this video is going to be split into 2 halves. So the first half, we're going to walk through all of the assets included in the plugin. And in the second half, we're actually going to do a setup and use a texture, plug it into a material, and show you the whole pipeline of what you should be doing as a user of this plugin. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so here we are in the Unreal 5 editor. So the first thing you're going to need to do is go to your content browser, which is where we're at the moment, and you're going to hit settings over here in the top right. And if you scroll down here, you'll find a show plugin content option. So this allows you to see the content that's actually included with the plugin. If this isn't on by default, just hit that button. And then you'll find in your all, under content, engine, you'll find a plugins folder, and then you'll find the content for this plugin. So if you pop that open, you'll find that we've got a editor utility. We've got an example material with a few examples of some things demonstrated in there. We've got the 4 material functions, and as well as 2 textures, which we will be using a little bit later in our demonstration. So if we just go through these one by one. So the first one is the editor utility. So this is an automated tool that can allows you to apply texture settings. As you can see, it's supported only 2 textures. And it applies specific texture settings that are really beneficial for getting crisper and sharper and more reliable data from masks. So the first one here is it's setting the filter to nearest. The second one setting the MIP gen to unfiltered, the texture compression to BC7, and then this is just refreshing the texture assets. But we'll demonstrate this in action and what exactly each of these are benefiting a little bit later. So the second one is we've got our material examples. I'll get to this just in a second. We've got 4 material functions here. So one thing I'll just demonstrate here is as I said at the beginning, the library actually comes with several versions of the material expressions. So we've got this one, and this one. So this one's from RGB, this one's RGB, and this is RGBA. So it's 6 outputs, 8 outputs, or 10 outputs. Now, there's a little bit of a quirk with the compiler where you can't have duplicates of these, and I suspect it's to do with the instancing of the code. But one thing that you can do, which is really useful, is if you just wrap the expression in a function, you can then have as many of these as you want and they work totally fine. So I have duplicates of these expressions as material functions. So let me just drag this over here. So there's 2 versions of these ones. So this is what all of these are here. So if you just pop some of these open, you can see that these are just straight pass-throughs. So it allows you to get the functionality of having multiple ones if you need it. If you don't, then don't really bother using these. Again, this one's a pass-through. The simple version of this one is also a pass-through, but this one actually has a little bit of extra functionality. So one thing you'll notice on the RGBA node is we have an extra option in the details panel. So we've got a subtract alpha from key and white. So I'll explain what this does in a little while when we go through some of the examples, but that option is basically exposed as a parameter here. So you can basically put like a static bool on here if you wanted, and you can plug that in and have that changed there rather than having to change it directly on the node. So it's just a little bit of a nicety. I thought it'd make things a little bit easier for the users. But yeah, so those are the functions. They're essentially duplicates, as I said. So let's just delete that one. And then finally, we've got 2 textures, which we're going to be using a little bit later. So let's pop open our material example that should be skipped over. So this material isn't doing anything fancy. It's essentially using those textures I showed you and trying to show and express how they're extracting masks. So we will dive into our first example here at the top. So if we just change this to a square. So one of the things you might want to take awareness of is that the green output is not going to be the green output from the texture sample. So if I open this texture here, you'll see the only green here is actually this. But if we extract that channel, you actually see there's a lot more information in here, which we have, but we don't actually want. We want the pure green only and nothing else. Obviously, some of the other colors are a mix of green. So this node actually does properly extract the green channel. So if I just actually, let's just turn that Boolean there. You can see a before and after of the extraction through these nodes versus the native green channel, which is a lot better, a lot like more accurate, which is really cool. If we move on to our second example, we'll just have to plug this pin in here. And then you can see, again, it's just a little demonstration that we're extracting magenta and yellow. So if I open up this texture, slightly different, but we're extracting magenta and yellow from this. But as you can see, if we were in like something like a red channel, it's a totally different story. And yeah, we've managed to cleanly extract the magenta there and the yellow there, which is really nice. If we move on to example 3. So this is demonstrating some of the transparencies that are outputting as well. So that's kind of a straight alpha, whereas the transparencies are inverted alpha. If you wanted to use the black and the white from an alpha channel, which is just kind of a nice little nicety here. And then moving on to the final example in here. So this is example 4. This demonstrates the subtract alpha command I was showing you a little bit earlier. Now, if we pop open that texture again, and we put all the channels on, you can see in here that black is only in the center, okay? Whereas if we go to this, we get our key, you can see the black is actually detecting everywhere. Because if we go back to that texture, let's just close that one for a sec. If we turn alpha off here, the frame on the outside gets filled in with black. Some users may want it to actually just look like this, where the black is actually subtracted from the edge. So I've added that option in there. So now you can click that button and it will give you the result that looks like this instead of this. So that's kind of your toggle. You're getting the option to get a version of the key with the alpha edges removed. Now, some cases you might not want it. You might want to consider them as full independent masks, but the option's there. More options, the better in my mind. So that's the example plugin. And I think next we're going to dive into a setup from the beginning and showing you exactly all of the things you need to be knowing and why the textures are set up the way they are. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so here we are in a brand new material and we're going to plug in this texture sample and we're going to start extracting some masks. So we've got this nice little mask made here and we've got red, green, blue, cyan, magenta, yellow, key, white and alpha in it. And so we've got everything that we want, all 4 channels. We can plug in this RGB here just to demonstrate. But yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to extract individual masks from all of them and we're going to get 10 different masks from this. Okay, so we're going to run into some problems here and we're going to demonstrate how to fix them and kind of the steps involved. Okay, so first, let's make our function. So let's just use the full-blown one with all of the features. So this is the... and if we just plug in our red channel, we've got our red. It's as simple as that. Now, one thing you're probably going to run into is that your red, green, and blue are probably going to be fine, okay? Just out of the gate without doing anything. You're going to run into issues with your other channels. So if we plug in our cyan here, you can see that there is actually some issues creeping in here. And one thing I actually really like to do is if you use a seal, you can actually start getting some really clear lines on issues. So you can clearly see any issues and see if there if there's any bleeding or any dots or issues just kind of scattered throughout. So you can see on basically every single one that's not the red, green, and blue, we're gonna get some incorrect values coming from these, which is absolutely not what we want to do. Now, if we open up this texture, this is actually caused by some of the settings that Unreal is doing. So if we zoom in here, you can see all of these are bleeding through the textures. You can see all of these pixels are bleeding through here. And we're getting a lot of artifacts and a lot of issues. So this is where our editor utility comes in. So if you right click on the texture and go to scripted asset actions, we have a plugin category and just click apply texture mask settings. So this is going to apply everything, and everything that I can do for you, it will fix. But we're going to manually do it just to demonstrate what this is doing automatically. So inside the texture, the first thing that we're going to actually fix is the filter. So if you scroll down in here, you'll find an option called filter under the texture category. So it's just here called filter. What we're going to do, actually let me just zoom in so you can demonstrate this a little bit easier when it gets turned on. If we turn filter to nearest, you can see it's sharpened up all of these pixels here, okay? Which is really good. So now if we go back in, oh look, it's all gone. Well, if we bring these side by side just so I can demonstrate some of the issues, go original, nearest. Cool, that sorted that out. But we also have another issue. So if we get one of the other masks where it might be a little bit easier to demonstrate this, there we go. So you might see on here, we've got some speckling. See on these little dots over here. And also we've got some white floating from the mask. This isn't in the texture. So if we go have a look at that in here, you can see, oh, that's not solid yellow, green, or cyan, or white. I don't know how well it's going to come across on the video compression, but that's not correct. So the next thing we need to do is set a different compression setting. So if you go to the compression category, you'll find compression settings. And then in here, you want to scroll down and you'll find BC7. Okay, if you hit that, boom, that issue is gone. So if we bring these again side by side, let me just find the compression setting, reset, artifacts, BC7, boom, it's gone. Okay, wonderful. But we have one final issue that we're going to run into here, and it's similar to the first one with the filtered. So although we've fixed it, you might have seen it there, when we start to zoom out and the texture begins to MIP, we're running into the same issue because we need to set the unfiltered option to the MIP. Okay, so if you go back to the texture and scroll up right to the top, you'll find MIP gen settings, and then you just want to select unfiltered from this one as well. So if we just save that, go back, boom. So that's all three of the options that you need to set. You need to set unfiltered in both the texture and the MIP settings, and then you need to set it to BC7, okay? And this will give you a really nice sharp texture with no bleed, which is really nice. And this is one-to-one with what it looks like in an outside package like Photoshop, which is perfect. This is going to give us exactly what we want. So now if we plug in every single channel, you'll notice that there is no artifacting on any of them, no matter the distance, which is really, really nice. And that's about all it is to this. But now I do have to stress that, like anything with shaders or animation or anything that you're doing, if you input bad data, you're going to get bad data out. So let me just quickly demonstrate by bringing in a bad texture example. So this one here hasn't been made properly. Like, this is a bad mask, okay? So even if we have all of the settings that I talked about here on the side, so this is MIP gen settings set to unfiltered, we've got the compression settings set to BC7, and we've also got the filter to nearest. If you zoom in on this texture has bleeding between pixels, which we can't have to have a proper mask like this. If we want to extract cyan, magenta, yellow key, you need to have proper whole values. So you can't have any of this bleeding or fraying between pixels. This is just going to cause issues. So if I demonstrate by bringing this into here and plugging that straight in, you can see already on the red, we've got some artifacting here, got some artifacting there, but it's going to get even worse when you start getting to the cyan, magenta, and yellows. So no, you've got to remember that, like I say, it's not a miracle worker. You need to have good inputs to get good outputs. You can't have messy stuff coming in. It's not going to clean things up because the data itself is wrong. Whereas if you look at this version of this one, these are all really nice sharp pixels. Everything is whole numbers. Everything's either white or black in all of the channels. There's no grays or like half values. Everything has to be whole. And this allows you to a really powerful system where you can extract 10 masks from one texture, which your texture samples will really, really love you for this. But yeah, that's probably the biggest thing that you got to keep in mind, that you need to have good quality masks. And yeah. So one thing I'll also just remind you of as well before we wrap up is, yeah, make sure when you bring the texture in, you do scripted asset actions, you apply those settings, you can then bring that in, plug it in, and then you can do any of them. So you can do the material functions, you can do the simple ones, even if you just want to use RGB, you can just bring in the simple ones and just do the red, green, blue, cyan, magenta, and yellow. Maybe you don't want key and white or alpha and transparency. This one will be good enough for you, but you'll see that they work out of the game. And that's about it with the tutorial. It's quite a simple plugin. It's plug your stuff into the node and plug it out with some texture settings that are advised to be pressed. And yeah, if you've got any questions, feel free to send me an email or join the Discord, the Tech Anim Corner. I'm more than happy to help. And yeah, hope you have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye.